Howdy folks, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go ahead and hopefully finish up the PMCS that we need to do to get private parts ready for this summer's activities. So let's dive right into it and get things going. Okay, the last episode we had gone ahead and showed you guys how to repack the wheel bearings, set the preload, change the seals, and so we weren't going to show the rest of the wheels. There's no point. I mean, all four of them are the same. So we went ahead and started tearing into the left front, or the right front, excuse me, and we found some issues. Oh, this is the wheel bearing, the inner wheel bearing. You can see that, those dark spots on the rollers. That means that that bearing has seen some water. And you get down in here, you take a look at the race, and look at that. So, we're going to show you guys how to go ahead and change out the wheel bearings of bearing races before we get to any of the rest of the lube points that we've got to hit and checking all the fluid levels. Okay, now if you'll look, we'll clean some of the grease out right there. See that notch? That gives you room to get in with a punch, and there's a notch on the other side as well. It gives you room to get in there with a punch and easily knock those bearings out. Now the outer one still seems to be in decent shape, but we are going to replace both of them. So let me get the camera set up and so you can see what we're doing here. Okay, you're going to want to grab a long punch and a hammer, and you'll get into that slot there. Just start tapping it on one side and back to the other. Just remember to work it back and forth, and that race will just come right on out of there. And there it goes. Now we'll go ahead and flip around to the other side and we'll show you what it looks like coming out. Now this may be getting the outer one out is a little bit more difficult because there's not a whole lot of room to swing the hammer on the inside here. So we're going to see if we can find maybe a little bit shorter punch to do this with. We may have to These are always a joy to try to do here, with everything still inside the rig, but there we go. We just got to get her cleaned out, and we'll show you pressing the new ones in. All right, I'm going to show you something that I screwed up on. When I was using this particular punch, I was not paying close enough attention to what was going on, and I marred this up pretty bad. So we're going to have to go in with something to get that cleaned up. Otherwise, we'll never be able to get the other bearing to press in there. It's never a good thing when you mar up the bearing surfaces like that, but this is not the end of the world. So I'm going to go ahead and get a tool to go ahead and get that cleaned up. Okay, we're going to go in here with a Dremel tool. We're going to try to get it in here. We've got a small little grinding bit. We want to use very, very light pressure, and probably slow the speed down a little bit, because all we want to do is just knock the tops and get in there and check your work periodically to make sure you don't go in too deep. And it looks like we've got another spot right here that we screwed up. Okay, we got the worst of it knocked off. Now we're going to go ahead and change over to a sanding disc, a flap wheel type thing, to get in there and smooth it out. We'll be right back. All right, we've got a flap wheel on the Dremel. We're going to come in from this side here. And just kind of carefully smooth it out. And we still have the, the nicks in there, but the raised portion is what we're trying to get rid of. Much, much better. Now we can go ahead and wipe that out, clean that up real good, and then we can press the races in. Okay, we've got our fresh race here, and we have a bearing driving tool. Bearing sits, the race sits on like that, and you just knock it in there. Problem is, we are never going to be able to get to it with this on here like this, so we're going to have to pull this little handle off. Now this is aluminum, so you got to be real careful. You don't want to be beating the heck out of this. So what we're going to do, we're going to set that in there, get it started. Well, I guess she's going to go in. So we're just taking small swings at it. And we'll check the other side, and it's still got a ways to go. But you can see we're not putting any real bad dings on this. We still got probably 1/4 inch or so to go. So now if you don't have a bearing driver like this, if you can find a piece of aluminum or a piece of brass, or a piece of dense plastic or something like that, or if you have one of these vehicles, you're better off going ahead and buying the tools that you need to go ahead and keep these things maintained. Either that, or take them to somebody who does. Because the right tools make this kind of job, doable. Make it easier, and make it so that you don't end up, breaking something or screwing something up. As you can see, and let's see if I can get this camera loose from here. You can see the bearing is seated fully up against the lip there. Now for the outer seal, that's going to be easy, because we can just use or for the outer race, excuse me, we can just use the handle on it and knock that in. So we'll go ahead and get that one and get that knocked in. It looks like filming the installation of the outer race went to time lapse for some reason. So, but you gotta get the gist of how it works. So we've got the bearings installed, the races installed, and the rest of it is just like packing, repacking the wheel bearings from the previous video, which we'll go ahead and put a link up on the top for that. And so we're going to go ahead, and I'm not going to bother filming repacking the wheel bearings and putting this back together, because it's, like I said, it's just the same. So the next thing we'll be getting on to is checking the differentials and getting everything put back together and ready to go. Okay, we are down underneath here, and we're going to show you where the grease fittings are. The rest of the grease fittings are. We're underneath the front end that still have yet to be greased. In the previous video, you saw us grease all of the outside tie rod ends and lube points, but you're also going to have on the front drive shaft. Now let's get this spun around here. This is on the passenger side. You're going to have a grease fitting on this U-joint right there. The reason why I'm not going to show you guys greasing these points is because I can't hold the camera, show you where they got to be greased, and grease it at the same time. So we've got one on the inner U-joint on the half shaft. You're going to have one both right and left. Yeah, there's the one that's right there. You're also going to have one on the slip yoke for the half shaft. That one is going to need to get a few hits of grease. On the front drive line, you got one right there at the differential, and then at the transfer case, you're going to have the same thing. So, and then you're also going to have on the right side here, you're going to have a grease fitting on the slip yoke there as well. So that's the rest of the grease points for the front end. And then on the front differential, you're going to have this plug. This is the fill plug. You're going to pull this off and check your fluid level. If you have to change it, That's where you're going to drain it at, and that's where you're going to fill it at. And you'll fill it with gear oil. I use an 85 140 gear oil in mine, mainly because that's what I have a whole bunch of. And it helps quiet the gears down a little bit. They're still noisy as heck, but it does quiet them down a bit. So on the transmission, you're going to have a fill plug right there. Now, there are two plugs like that. One of them is up here, and you do not, there we go, you do not want to remove that one. That is the, some of them have like a little locking tab on them. If you pull that one out, you're going to release a ball for the reverse, and you're going to be pulling the power pack to go ahead and tear apart the transmission to get that put back together. So, yeah, the lower one's the one you want. And this is the drain for the transfer case. If you're draining and changing the fluid levels on the transmission transfer case, you're going to pull this one and this one here. So you're also going to have grease fittings back here on the rear end. You're going to have grease fitting. I've got the parking brake on, so you can't really get to the grease fitting on the rear drive shaft here. Sometimes if you can't get the grease gun into it, you're going to have to pull these 4 bolts in order to and then hold these caps, these 2 caps together when you grease it. It's the same way in the back on the rear differential. Rear differential is exactly the same as the front. So you're going to have a fill plug there, drain plug in the back. It's an 1.1/8" socket. I would recommend using either a wrench or a 1/2" drive socket to do that. All of your lube points on your rear drive lines are all the same. So you lube those just the same as you do the front. The same thing with repacking the wheel bearings, is all exactly the same. So with that being said, we'll go ahead and get to trying to get this stuff done. Well, we cannot get this into the grease gun up into there. So we're going to try this adapter here, which should be able to just slide it right on in there. So what you have to do when you're doing this, though, and using an adapter like this, number one, make sure that it gets onto the grease gun. And then you're going to have to hold it up there pretty tight. Sometimes this stuff works okay, and sometimes it doesn't work with a darn. And this is not working. So we are going to end up going ahead and pulling the drive line off and just clamping that together so that we can twist it around enough to get access to it. All right, to get these front ones loose, make sure that you put it in gear and in 4-wheel drive. Otherwise, the drive shaft is just going to spin while you try to break these bolts loose. If you guys have a grease gun adapter that'll get down that small and that will actually stay on, clip on, so the grease goes into the U-joint instead of everywhere else, then that would definitely be the way to go. I unfortunately do not have such a tool. At any rate, you can see now we can get the grease gun on it. So now we can clip the grease gun on it. Maybe. Pump it about 2 or 3 times. It's going to push these out, but then you can push the caps back on. Then bolt it back up. Not the best way of doing it, I know, but it's better than letting the U-joints run dry and having a drive line come loose 50 miles from pavement. And you're going to have to do this with each end. I would recommend doing them one end at a time. That's all there is to it. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of them done, but all of it is pretty much the same. Okay, here we are. This is the rear drive line, the rear U-joint. These are pivoting just fine, but it takes a lot of effort to pivot it this way. So, that is not a lubrication issue. That is something else. So we are going to end up pulling this rear drive line and going and seeing what we have in our part stash, and hopefully we've got either another U-joint, or I think I have another drive line that's got good U-joints in it. So we're going to go back into part stash and see what we can come up with. All right, we found a new one, or not new, but a new used one that's got good U-joints in it. You can see we've got a lot of easy twist there versus it's just binding up real bad here. This was the rear end. So we're going to go ahead and throw that new one in and get back to work. Okay, first one we're going to hit is this one right here. Come on. Now we're going to try to get it loose. All it takes 2 or 3 hits. Okay. These are the grease fittings you got to hit on the inside here. Couple there. We've replaced the fitting on the U-joint here. That a couple of hits. And the same thing there. Now we are going to check the, I already had that loosened, so we got to check the rear end here. And yeah, she could use a little bit of top off, there. So we're going to go get some gear oil and top this thing off. Oh, this is what we've used. We put a little bit of 85 140 in this gun. All right, we got to find where. And just top it off until she starts coming out the fill plug. And there it is. It did not take much, but that is the whole point of this PMCS procedure, is to go ahead and catch these kind of things before they become a problem. All right, we've got all of the wheel bearings repacked now. We did discover a problem over on the right rear corner, which we'll show you here in a second, but we're going to go ahead and throw at least 3 of the tires back on. And one of the things that I did do is I rotated the tires. When you're rotating the tires, bias ply tires, like the tires that are on these things, you go left front to right rear, right front to left rear, and if you're doing a 5 tire rotation, which includes the spare, I don't remember where the spare goes in, but we have the spare we have is still brand new, and these tires are getting pretty worn down, so we're not going to go ahead and introduce the spare into the mix unless we absolutely have to. So at any rate, I'm going to go ahead and get at least the 3 tires put on, and then we'll show you what's going on with the driveline. Okay, now let's go ahead and show you what we have going on here. Okay, this driveline, this U-joint does not have a grease fitting. Now normally what I would do, and what I used to do, is I'd go ahead and pull the caps off and grease them. But can't do that to this one no more. So we got to pull this driveline out, and we have to replace the U-joint. Fortunately, we do have a U-joint, so we're going to get this thing pulled out of here, and I'll show you how to change a U-joint. Now, unfortunately, on these inboard half shafts, you got to use an open end wrench on it. Otherwise, you know, you'll never get these things off, because what you have to do is you've got to thread the nuts off until they hit the seal here, and then go to the next one. And I always find it a good practice to throw some knocker loose or WD-40 Croil, PB Blaster, whatever your penetrating oil of choice is. Let it soak into these nuts first. It helps to get this stuff to thread off. And then of course when you put them back on, you gotta start the U-bolt in, but you know, not fully seated. Otherwise these things won't come off. And because these are open differentials, you can't just throw it in gear and hit the parking brake. That won't lock it up. And there we have it. And then the fun part is getting this critter popped out of the yoke. It helps to have a pry bar, but I don't have one in here with me, and I am not rolling out from underneath this thing to go get a pry bar. At any rate, that's how you pull the inside U-joint or half shaft out. Okay, one of the first things you're going to need to do is you got to clean the dirt from around this clip here, and then pop the inner clip out. And new U-joint packets should have another one in it, but so you might want to check with that before you start flinging these clips. Sorry about that. My trying to watch what I'm doing and videoing at the same time isn't always that successful. At any rate, once you get the clips loose, then you've got to go ahead and knock the U-joint out of there. Let me get a punch and a hammer, and we'll get that happening. Alright, I do not have a punch, but what I do have is a small ball peen hammer and a larger one. There's that, and there's that. And that one is junk. So now let's go ahead and get a brush and clean this area up and get the new one installed, get this thing put back in the Jeep so we can go to the 4th of July fireworks in town tonight. All right. Now that that is all clean, we're going to grab our brandy new U-joint, and we're going to hope that we have new clips in this hardware kit here. We not only have new clips, but we have new U-bolts, nuts, and lock washers. Oh, wasn't that nice of them? So let's take the U-bolts, nuts, and washers and put them over here where I'm not going to lose them. Alright, this grease zerk here has to be towards that end of the half shaft. If it's not, you won't be able to get the grease gun into it. At any rate, you're going to slide the cross in like that. Get your cap set on there. Get your cap set on this end here. Okay, we are pretty much done. The only thing we got left to do is get old Pvt Parts down off the jacks, and we got to get the top pulled off because we're going to take him into town topless. Okay, we're going to show you how I go ahead and remove the top and fold everything up. First thing you got to do is you got to pull the spare tire and the fuel can off. And then you'll go ahead and pull all of these straps loose. And I tend to wrap them up and tie them up after I run them through the buckle, just to go ahead and keep them from flapping around. The next thing that we want to do, we need to get into here and pull these loose from here. That way that she's loose from the bow, and then you've got to pull all of these loose from this door support. Now the next thing we're going to do is get the top peeled back. And bring it all the way forward onto the hood. Once it's all the way forward onto the hood, you're going to fold the back part of it back onto itself. Make sure she's nice and flat, and then take this where the window is, fold it right about where the bottom of the window is. And this is going to make for a little bit more manageable way to deal with this. And the next thing is we're going to pull the top loose from the front, or from the windshield frame. Bring it back nice and neat. Fold it on top. Fold this back on top of itself. This way, when you go to put the top back on, you put it back on. You set it back onto the hood like this, and then you can easily get this piece threaded through the windshield frame. Once I get done with this, I'll usually fold it over one more time. So that it's nice and neat. And then fold it in half. And this should be about the size of the back seat. This normally would get stored underneath the back seat. If I put the back seat back in it, which I probably will here shortly, because I don't want butters falling out the back of the Jeep. That's how I fold up the top. This way I can also carry it with me when I'm out somewhere. Alright, now the next thing we've got to remove is the bows. We're going to undo the little pin retainer here. Pop that loose from the windshield frame, and then pull this loose, fold that under. And then this will fold all the way back up against the bow. We'll do that on the other side as well. And then from this point, loosen up these straps. And then, oh, that's right. We've got to loosen up those screws, those thumb screws. Loosen those up and leave those hang. Well, there we go. Those are loose. You're going to end up pulling that loose from there, folding that forward. And there we go. Top is folded down. Now, you'll take this strap here, run it up and over top of everything, through this footman loop that's underneath the fender well. And it is supposed to cover all of this stuff up, but evidently it does not. Huh. And then you just got to keep, you know, these have retainers on them, but sometimes these retainers don't work too well. So, oh, there we go. That wasn't down all the way. That was the problem. And this is what happens to canvas when it sits out for too long in the sun. So I'm going to have to get a ratchet strap or something to hold all this stuff down. But at any rate, that's pretty much the gist of it. Well, folks, that about does it for the PMCS for Private Parts and M151A1. We didn't do any fluid changes. Basically, they weren't necessary. We will be doing some follow-up videos on the driveline, replacing the U-joint and getting that driveline, basically a good, reliable spare. And we're going to get some half shafts, get some U-joints changed and some half shafts that we have, so we have some spares of those as well. But at any rate, I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for subscribing to the channel, for following what I'm doing here. For those of you that are interested in what's going on with this critter here, that's going to be coming up, so stay tuned. At any rate, thanks again, and now it's time to head out to the 4th of July fireworks for Urington, Nevada.
I love when he says wow because he sounds like Owen Wilson.